would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we're thankful that Matt Richard is here to give our invocation. Thank you.
God, we give you thanks for this day, and as we gather together to consider business, we pray your blessings upon it. And God, we are thankful for our community. Thank you for our leaders. God, as school time does approach, we pray that all the little things that need to get taken care of would be taken care of. And we lift up administration, personnel, everyone that's involved in our schools, and thank you for them. Thank you for their hard work and their sacrifice. And God, would you just give them strength to press on? And we pray that the rest of this summer would go well and preparing us for a great year. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a little bit different. The board requested that we have a local pastor come to each meeting to open us up in invocation. Thought that was an excellent idea that you guys had. And so Matt Richard, local pastor here, started the program, so we're excited. And Matt's my preacher, and he's leaving. Right? And so, but we wanted to get him in before he's gone. He's been a member of the community for 9 years, and so we appreciate all he's done. He's been involved in a lot of school activities and events, some sad events too, and he's helped us through those, and so we're very appreciative of him. So, thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you. And we have the honor of, or Dr. Pollard does, of recognizing one of our Hornet legends, our second Hornet legend tonight.
So last month we started this, and we honored Miss Powell. She's here again tonight, and this month it's going to be Coach Lorwald, Danny Lorwald. And Danny was one of my favorites from high school. He taught American history for many, many years. No. I told Danny this is going to be more of a roast. And longtime baseball coach, football coach, and it was exciting to play for him and to be his student. He was very caring, but also very passionate, very positive. He was a motivator for kids, and it was also a joy to be in his classroom. He knows American history, and he keeps up with politics. And you can ask him any question, he can give you an up-to-date answer to it. But I wanted to read a couple of things here about Danny. He started in 1977, retired in 2011 with 34 years. He and his wife Sue, boys Clint, Craig, and Casey were part of the Jesty family for many years. He grew up in Hereford. Now, Danny, if I get this wrong, let me know. Played baseball at Amarillo College and Oklahoma State.
Yes.
He graduated from West Texas State before teaching and coaching in Hurst, Euless, Bedford, and Plainview. And I felt, well, Marcia always finds, she's our historian, a 1979 evaluation from Clay Davis, I believe was his name. But it was all good. Danny, it was all good. We got rid of the bad ones. No. But he wrote, above average teacher and coach, enjoys his work, and is well respected by the students and the staff. And I liked under loyalty to the profession and his coworkers, it was rated superior. And so I think that says a lot about Danny. And we even have we've got that original and also a walkthrough that Bill Bradley did on you. So we're trying to conjure up all these bad now. But we've got this, a G, and a certificate. And again, Coach, you were honored to play for and to be a student for. So we're glad you're here. And did you have any words you wanted to say?
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
No, I worked for, I counted, I worked for 6 superintendents, 8 or 9 principals, 6 head coaches, and we didn't always agree with all of them. For the most part, we agreed. Always put GHS first.
You not only survived, you excelled.
Yeah.
You did good. Well, Coach, if you can, you want to come on up here and get a picture and all this stuff?
Sure. I know all these school board members too.
Some of us too well.
I was gonna say, we won't tell if you don't.
A lot of them real well. All right?
Our kids anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make it. I'll cut you off.
Yeah, my daughter's second dad.
Thank you. Congratulations. Hey, Charlie. Good to see you. Hadn't seen you in a while.
It's gonna hug your neck. Congratulations.
You bet.
Good to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Man, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, congrats, man.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you, Mary.
Now we have our student spotlight, Dr. Holly.
Ms. Yancey and I are going to honor David Bryan tonight. David, he specifically scored, now let me give a little background here. A perfect score on the SAT is a 1600. He scored a 1570. So he just barely skated by. And what I like about David is his response is, well, now I'm going to study some more and try to make a 1600. And that's the right type of attitude to have. And so I've known David for several years through Boy Scouts. And I think, are you working on your Eagle Scout this summer?
Yes.
Okay, so he's done that. The whole family went to Ireland. How was Ireland?
It was very, very nice there. Very, very green as well.
Okay. The legend's true.
Not brown like Texas.
Okay, good. Yancy, did you want to add anything? I've kind of stolen your thunder.
No, you hit on that, but I looked back at David's scores. You know, we for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been trying to promote the PSAT 8-9, the PSA is a 10th grader, the PSAT is an 11th grader, and then the SAT going in after that. And David is kind of that first cohort, maybe second cohort of students to do that. And I look back at his scores. As a 10th grader, he made an 1140. As an 11th grader, he made a 1320. And as an 11th grader on the SAT, made a 1570. And that's the purpose of that program, to grow those scores and see what you're doing and see where you can grow. And so it kind of exemplifies what we're trying to accomplish. So, congratulations.
What a novel idea. If you study and practice, you get better. And so David's a smart kid. And so he could very naturally just do well. But because he's also a hard worker, he's doing extremely well. So David, we wanted to honor you tonight with a certificate and a quick picture. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right, David. Appreciate you.
Yes, I did.
I'm late.
Dude, let Mom take our picture first. You're good? You're good.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Job well done. Thank you. Very nice. Good to see you.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good job. Thank you. Come on, pretty lady.
Mary Ann, did you not want to read this mission, or
Oh,
you want to just skip
God,
it?
we're not gonna skip it. We're gonna
You
read
did.
it. It kind of threw me when the preacher was here. But it's not your fault. Yes, Mr. Fincher will read our mission for GISD.
Mission for GISD. The mission of Gatesville ISD, a portal to limitless possibilities, is to empower our students to be life-ready, knowledge seekers, and problem solvers by instilling leadership, innovation, integrity, critical thinking, and service through challenging and engaging learning experience, facilitated by passionate teachers and supported by caring parents and community members. And I believe that young man was a fine example of that.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fincher. Now we're going on to public comments. Is there anybody signed
No,
up?
ma'am.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we need to pull anything? I believe everybody was here for that meeting.
I was not.
You were not, okay, you were at camp.
Right.
Having
You,
fun.
you don't have to pull it unless you want to.
Okay, then we won't do that, okay. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda? Good.
So moved.
Okay, John, second, David? Any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Are you abstaining? You don't have to.
I don't have to.
Okay, it passes. All right, thank you. Now we're moving on to the information items.
Okay, we'll get started with the updated high school renovation schematic design and cost estimate. We've got a lot of friends here, and so WRA is represented by Mary O'Brien, and we've got Keith and Donovan here helping, and Ed Mazonik is here, our construction manager. He's going to be giving some input on cost numbers, but the main thing is that Mary's come with new renderings, new pictures, schematics, kind of the evolution of where we're from, to kind of give a backdrop and a reminder, okay, where did we leave this off at last? So we kind of sent Mary off to look at a few things that we wanted to see as far as the non-sawtooth roof option, a more moderate ceiling height, reduce some of the glass for safety issues, go ahead and extend that emergency fire lane, reduce the scope of some of the landscaping that was in some of the images, transition the courtyard at the CTE area to more of a work area, and then finally just keep looking at that canopy in the courtyard to make sure that's what we want. And so keep that in mind as you're looking and listing, and then Ed will come back to us with some numbers as far as the project cost. It still seems to be holding at $19.4 million. And to give you another update, our geotech study is underway, and so they started boring. They've completed 2 of the 5 holes, and the holes are only 6 inches in diameter, but 35 feet deep. And so it's kind of interesting to watch. I watched a little bit of it Friday, and they were wondering who that strange guy was that kept pulling around. But they're hopefully going to knock that out totally by next week, probably Thursday, Friday sometime. We can get that all finished. So we're moving right along with that. And so tonight, if the board's pleased with what they're continuing to see with the design and the renderings, it's possible that on Monday, August 12th, that we might call a bond. And so that's just kind of keep that in your mind that could be looming. That's also the date of the budget workshop. So it's possible you could knock out 2 items that same evening. And at that point, we would just kind of go from there. So with that background, Mary, do you want to start with the presentation?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me again. I'm excited to be here. So we've been working really hard and have done a few design changes, which we're going to be presenting tonight. So the first thing we like to start with is a video walkthrough, so a rendered walkthrough of the future school. And then I also have, similar to what's in your packet, but still images of both the site plan, floor plan, and just still images of each space rendered. So. Okay. Just wait for him.
It's a little lag.
Just push for it. Is it going?
It's playing on the laptop, but it's not projecting onto the screen.
We just figured there was something really big coming up.
That's
That's what we're supposed to stop talking about.
The best part.
So far.
You do this, okay, okay.
Way to visualize something.
Yeah, so I hope this gets you a little excited about what's to come. Okay. So this is the updated site plan, and we've already gone through about 50% of the construction documents and really getting our consultant on board. So we're starting to develop a lot more of the site plan. Civil with Gessner Engineering is off to the races. So they're doing an extensive site study as well as a drainage study for the site. So if there's any specifics on the site, we can dive into further detail if anyone has questions. One thing you will see reflected is the fire loop that we are bringing around the entire building. So that is one of the items that we talked about in the last meeting to include, as well as the flat roof option. That is one of the main updates. Last time we were in Gatesville, actually I'm going to back up for just a second. Last time we were in Gatesville, we actually had a city pre-development meeting, and that went really well, and we learned a lot of information. One of the main things is the supply of water coming onto the site. The new building will have a fire suppression system, and just getting that system up and running will be, we're going to have to bring some new water lines onto the property.
I think we had determined that off of Elm was amount of water pressure needed.
I don't know how much detail you want me to get into right now, but I just went back. But we are coming off of Elm and then going south on the site. There we go. So coming off of Elm and then coming down onto the site and then up. So our new fire riser room will be in the existing kitchen area. It helps to have it in existing so we can get those lines pulled and up and running while the new building is under construction. And the new areas, well, the renovated areas will also have fire protection. Okay. This is the overall floor plan, and we also met with the school librarian I guess that was about a month or so ago, and met with her and got a lot of her feedback and made some tweaks. Actually, before this meeting, we met with Gail as well, and we're going through some an in-depth look at the kitchen and the serving lines and how the whole cafeteria is going to function as a whole. So we're also working through that right now. It's kind of a lag on this. I was going to just take a quick look at each of the different floor plans. So we've broken up the plan into what we're calling units. So that's how we're going to break up our construction documents. This is Unit A. So this is the main connection, the classroom area between the existing library, which is now the new administration, and the technology building. This is where most of the science, all the science labs and some of the science classrooms are going to take place, but for all intents and purposes, we're really calling typical classrooms just classrooms, and then it's up to the school to determine what goes into those rooms. This is currently the layout of the administration, and we've also met with the MP. There you are, in the back, hiding in the back, about some of the function of the administration. So we're trying to really go through each department and meet with everybody to make sure all of their needs are satisfied and they like the design. This is Unit C, a typical classroom wing. This is to the west of the new cafeteria and library addition. The new library and cafeteria and kitchen with the shared courtyard between the library and cafeteria as well. And the kitchen, like I said, based on today's meeting, will get adjusted some. This is the corridor outside of the existing gym, the practice gym, where we're doing new classrooms along there. And then this entry is down into the existing cafeteria, which is now going to be classroom space. I'm kind of going quickly, so if anyone has questions, please let me know. But this is the existing cafeteria, which we're renovating. So, and Donovan and I were actually over there measuring, and he was poking his head above ceiling tiles. So we're trying to really investigate what's up there. So, and lots of new group restrooms throughout as well. And then where the current, it was a locker room at one time, but now it's used as storage down in the bottom south corner. That is going to be the new electrical room. And help take care of that, all the wires coming into the building outside of the kitchen. So all of that will get cleaned up and consolidated to one area. And then this is a small unit, but right outside of the choir room, we are doing a little bit of an extension of that hallway, so the kids don't have to go outside the building to get to choir. So it'll all be internal. And much safer as well. Okay, so the main entrance of the building. So a lot of the scope of work, we are going to do some of the pavers up the front with some planter, bollard type planters, as well as adding some windows onto that existing library space to help bring light into those future offices. Sorry, there's kind of a lag on this. So, this is the new entry, again, with a new storefront into the secure main entry vestibule. We do, and I have samples of a lot of the finishes that we're selecting as well. So if you want to see what this tile looks like, or carpet, I have a lot of that, if anyone's interested. New reception desk and entry, and so the main office area is secure, and so you do have to go through another set of doors to access the office in the back as well. So this is currently standing about where the water, as Toby likes to call it, his water feature is. So we do have a grade change at this location, so we will have a very gradual sloping ramp. But we'll have 2 collaboration rooms. We're able to use some of the wall space as display cases, but this is approaching the library and then the cafeteria is to the right. And then the CTE courtyard is to your left, just to orient you. This is looking back the other way where we just were standing and right outside the library. So the library is on the left. We did eliminate some of the doors after talking with the librarian just to, we do have to have numerous exits for fire egress, but we were able to cut some of them down as well. And then the view into the CTE courtyard. And then we have accent tile, so the hexagon tile wall, you'll see that kind of sprinkled throughout the building. So this is the new revised roof design showing a flatter roof option. In the library, we do have a north-facing clear story window to help bring that natural light in. But we're able to bring the ceiling, or bring the whole roof height a lot lower. We're about 22, 20? Yeah. So versus the 30 and above that we were previously at. So we did reduce that quite a bit. And then some sound panels just to help control the sound in this space, as well as the acoustic ceiling tiles above the main part of the library will help, again, just control the sound in that space. And we did a full book count and everything in this, and yeah, so there were more than enough space for books in the library. If you're looking, so this is standing under the classroom area and looking towards the cafeteria. One change we did talk about is we're gonna add a glass garage door separating the cafeteria and the library space. That was something as a collaboration we all thought was an interesting idea. So if you ever wanted to, you could have overflow. And it's also a way to use the cafeteria for more than the 2 or 3 hours during the day that lunch is being run, and use that space as just more curriculum space or collaboration, or a space where a teacher could even take the kids from the library. So it was just a way to recapture that space to instruction. Above that garage door, we are thinking about having some sort of historical mural, maybe showcasing the city's history. None of that is exactly nailed down right now, and that is something we would collaborate with you all on if there's something of historical significance that you would want to see in that. We're definitely welcome those ideas. There's a lot of images. So there's a lot of spaces. So this is looking into the cafeteria. So again, bringing the roof height down quite a bit. I'm calling it flat roof. It is not, trust me, it's not flat. There is a good slope to it. But we did add some skylight features just, again, to help bring that light down into that space. We did reduce the amount of glass. So along that corridor, along the west side, if you remember before, it was one long ribbon window, and so we did reduce a lot of that. In the library, I can't go back, it's kind of dragging, but the window height is above the bookshelves. So it's in the next image. It's in your packet. So I'm trying to go through this. This is looking towards the back part of the cafeteria and having some booth seating. We're trying to give a variety of seating throughout the space so kids can choose where they want to go. We still have the countertop seating as well along some of those windows. This is the back part of the parking lot looking towards the courtyard area. So, and the landscaping is kind of a placeholder right now. We just shrink the size of the plants. But this is, we are looking at having a hard connection for that canopy right now. So it is a fully integrated design at this point. We've gone through extensive conversations about security and how we're going to handle that space. We are going to have a more decorative wrought iron fence across that space so it can be secure. We will have like panic hardware in the event of an emergency, so you could exit freely out. But it is a lockable space, so nobody should be back there if they don't need to be. We're also bringing some skylights into that space as well, and some fans. This is the CTE courtyard, and the door to the left is an electrical room, a secondary, smaller electrical room just to help pull our runs. This is actually right outside the science classroom. So if you saw in some of the other renderings, there's windows above the teaching wall, and we're having what we're calling tech bars in those spaces. So a student could just plug in their laptop, and we'll have lots of outlets and power on those walls as well. This is right outside the cafeteria with more skylights moving down that hallway. We're trying to bring some borrowed light into the classrooms to the west on the left because those are internal classrooms and they don't have a window directly outside.
Remember one thing I liked is that on the interior doors that were previously a lot of glass, you switched to the
we did reduce
traditional
that.
just a strip, which our police chief liked.
Yeah, and that was one thing we did talk about in our pre-development meeting. They did want to reduce the size of the side light on the doors, so we went with 12 inches and then the smaller piece of glass in the door itself. So that has been updated. This is a view of a typical classroom, and finishes we're looking at is an LVT flooring. That's really typical for what we're seeing right now. You don't have to wax it, you don't have to strip it. You clean it with a neutral cleaner and one of the buffing machines, but it's really low maintenance and easy to take care of. So.
So no waxing.
Yeah, no waxing.
I walk in the building right now.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
It is a very big job, and the payoff of that product is like less than a year. Like the first time you don't have to wax, it's already like made up the difference.
Cost difference from VCT to that LVT, how much?
So the actual material cost is, so VCT runs about $1 a square foot material cost, and LVT is anywhere between $2 to $3 depending on what you're picking. But the life cycle of it, again, since you don't have to strip it or wax it, the first summer you made it back. So, and it's a lot greener material because you're not putting a lot of the VOCs that the wax puts up into the air. This is science lab. This is a view outside. This is near the existing gym. So a view of some of the group restrooms that we're planning. And we're trying to capture a lot of the void space because since we do have so many firewalls in this building where we're building up against the existing, we're going to have a 2-hour firewall continuous. In some instances that gives us a pocket to work with, and so we're trying to use that pocket for things like display cases. Briefly, so our schedule has remained the same. We're still on schedule to finish construction documents right before the November bond. So everything is ready to go, and hopefully if voters vote yes on the bond and everything is the green light, then we'll be off and running and construction can start soon after. We are looking at a construction schedule of about 18 months. We really need about 2 summers to, as kids move around and shift things, it is about an 18-month construction schedule. I have some big overview numbers of the cost of the project, which I'm going to let Ed speak on.
All I have is the information with Eddie is updated to percent, so.
And I have, those numbers reflect what you.
Exactly, so I mean, there's been just a little bit of movement, and we're optimistic that all these numbers are going to hold relatively close. There is a 3% budget contingency that he has built in the project while we're doing the evaluations. And the good news is with the completion of the geotech report, and as we get near 75% completion of the documents, Eddie will go back and update the budget again, and we'll be approaching the fourth quarter, kind of see where the prices are. We do follow what we call the AGC Consumer Price Index that's printed by Ken Simonson, our national economist, so to speak, and there's been a little movement in the commodities that have risen slightly. I think it's somewhere in the 1.7% for the year, which really isn't too bad. One of their biggest concerns is the labor market seems to keep inching upward. So we'll just have to watch that. We are optimistic still that if we could get this thing bid before January, that's going to be the best value for Gatesville ISD.
Going back to the design, I like the big planters in the front. We had a car go through a storefront just this past week.
Oh, yeah.
And so safety is, we always look through the lens of safety, and so
Yeah.
anything you could do to help us, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's very common in front of buildings, too.
Yeah.
Like Target has.
Yeah, Target has the
And
iconic red ones.
Yeah.
Central Market has
that's a
fruit,
great idea. You're right.
like a big tomato.
Oh.
No, I don't like this. Yeah, well, and being able to plant them with some landscaping would, you know, help with the curb appeal of the front door.
Any other questions?
CPE courtyard.
Yep,
Where is it?
right here.
In there.
Yeah.
So, which way is it positioned? I see, is this a glass wall?
Yep.
So is that on
That's-
that? So,
Because we have a hard connection between where currently you go under like a walkway
Mhm.
to get to CTE. We are bringing that enclosed. So this is the walkway, and then this is the view looking towards the library.
That's an awful lot of glass. Isn't it?
Where are you? What page are you on?
CTE
CTE
courtyard.
courtyard, if I can go. You want to?
We may have to hire some window cleaners.
I was gonna say.
Right.
We don't have to wax it.
Yeah, they don't have to
I'll
wax. They
bet-
can clean the
I'll-
windows.
We gotta keep them working.
I think they got plenty to do. That's what I'm looking at.
So we did think, because this is such a central focus of the campus now, and this is really going to be one of the main hubs that all the kids and staff are moving through constantly, it would be good to just have that view throughout the space, and really from this point you can see continuous all the way through into the cafeteria even. But just bringing really nice views, and you can monitor what's happening in that courtyard a lot better.
Okay. So you talked about this roof that you call flat but sloping.
Mhm.
Which way does the water drain off?
Ugh, so many different directions right now. So we are working on
I was trying to get an idea.
figuring that
of the
out, yeah.
angle.
So that's why, so Donovan and Wilson, who's sitting outside right now, is our roofing consultant. And they were up on the roof this afternoon looking at where all the water is running, and that is something
Because
we're
right now,
working
I
on.
know this seat, that courtyard where the seat, that's a low area.
Yes.
It holds water, correct?
And currently you have drains that go under your building and
That's
draining
correct.
to that gift shop,
Yes.
that way.
That year.
So the overall slope of the site is very, very shallow, and a lot of the water is going to that north corner. And we're trying to divert a lot of that water off of that corner. And so actually, if we go to, can you go to the site plan? I think you can do it faster than me. But one of the things we're having to do with this project is a detention pond. And we're looking at placing that in the field area in between the kitchen and the football field. That's really just to help with that drainage and take the water somewhere else from that one corner, because everything is going to that corner.
Is that outline space in there?
It's kind of a.
Yeah. Right in the middle of our practice field.
Yeah, we're gonna practice swimming there. Water issue, that's a hard issue with
It's
that
a-
area because
and-
it's the old building and the way it's in a bad location.
Yeah, and there's hardly any slope in the entire site. And
Really?
every roof surface drains. And so they're all just draining anywhere, onto sidewalks or onto the pavement, and the water isn't really going anywhere. That's why it's all going to that one corner. And it's taking a long time to get that water over to that corner. So we need to there has to be some solution to it. And I think the detention pond is gonna be the best solution. So our civil engineer with Gassner Engineering came out, and we had a big meeting with the district and the city, and it was a 2-hour conversation at least that we had about that same
Mr.
topic.
Featherston was here, and Mr. Newman, the water, so water and drainage are the two.
Where will it drain to?
So it'll eventually tie it, it's gonna eventually go south to Marshall.
Yeah,
to
this is
Marshall.
south.
Yeah.
Well, was there any issue here with putting this road in? That's kind of a ditch across there, wasn't there?
It's pretty close against that berm, but we think we have enough clearance there. One issue with that road is the pole vault pit is currently running north-south, and I think we're gonna have to relocate that, yeah.
Now, you wanna hear me like something?
Okay. Yes, please.
I like you getting rid of that sawtooth roof.
Okay.
I like the new roof.
I like that plan. That looks
And I like
good.
bringing the roof down,
Yeah.
so I think it looks more like our school.
That's great, thank you.
And you are using all the little pocket areas, so.
We're trying to make use of any space we can find, so might as well, it's there. Let's not just cover it up, so.
Are we gonna lose very much parking from the back of the building? Is there is there very much parking going on now?
In the back.
In the back?
Probably games.
No? It's been pretty well shut down.
There it is.
If
And
that's
our-
reflective, it's pretty much like it is.
Yeah, and our parking counts aren't gonna go down any, so, and our conversations, with Dr. Pollard have been, they're okay with parking. That's not a cramp, like,
Yeah.
there's sufficient parking for the site, so we were trying to maintain that.
And so delivery trucks, are they going to go on around? Are they gonna turn around? What's the plan
What
on
we've
that?
talked about is this part of the fire loop would be gated off, for you would have a key if you needed to drive around there, or in the event of an emergency, the fire department could also access that. But it wouldn't be
On an open road.
right, exactly. And so, deliveries would come through here, and we have dumpsters and the grease trap and everything. Deliveries for the kitchen are all back here as part of the service yard, and trucks could pull in and back up, and there's plenty of clearance for that. Because when we originally designed it, we designed it as a T turnaround for the fire truck, and if you're designing it for the fire truck, any other delivery vehicle can.
And you said you checked that, the automotive shop.
We
when
did.
you come in. Plenty of room.
Mhm.
Okay.
I have a concern already on Marshall Street. When you get a rain, all that drainage comes off that football field. And as it sits right now, if you get a good rain, you cannot get across that street.
So that's the point of the detention pond. So a detention pond is detaining the water and slowly releasing it. So it's not just a sheet of water pouring out into the street. So it holds it, and in a good rain, you may have,
But where is your
flow or
detention
so
pond?
of water, and then it'll
Practice field.
slowly, once everything else is drained out, then it'll start releasing it.
Good. Yeah, it's bad. You can't get across that street. Awful.
So in the long run, I think we're gonna definitely be improving the
So,
overall site. for
Show me
drainage.
over there on the pond how it will drain to Marshall.
Some pictures
Go
of
ahead.
it, so it kind of drains, there's a swale kind of down the middle existing and kind of ties down through here, through these buildings.
Okay.
And there's like an outlet right next to those buildings.
Those spots.
Somewhere in here.
Yeah, by the athletics.
Other questions or comments, concerns, Mary?
Where you gonna practice football?
We're gonna practice, right up on the new.
Yeah, they haven't used it in practice field for a few years.
I think the soil's so hard, they don't use it.
They practice generally primarily on the football field or on the small turf.
The pond, is it gonna affect that pipe that was laid across there? Of course, I
We
know
are
that's not
we
hard,
are
but-
fully aware of the pipe and are trying to avoid it.
Well, it's probably not a hard pipe to reposition, but I just know they just put that through not too long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, we're trying to orient the pond. That's why it kind of angles like it does, is actually to avoid that pipe.
Okay.
So. Well, if there's no other questions, Mike Holmberg with our office. Huh? Oh, hey, there you go. Okay, well, I'll
Any
turn
other
it over to
questions?
them.
Mary, anybody else? Are you all good?
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, you've asked a handful for all of us. I took all the notes.
Okay.
I love it. I love the gold too, and the high looking
Yeah.
tiles. That's my favorite, I think. The entrance says a lot.
It works with the Hornet.
Mary, your team's worked very hard. We appreciate you.
Yes, they really have. So, yeah, Donovan's on the team, and I have to definitely give him some kudos. So he's
It was so hot on the roof today, his phone malfunctioned. So,
For a couple minutes.
very hot. Yeah. Thank you, Don. Well, the next item is very closely related. It's about basically now the financing of it. And so we've got kind of a duo here. Brian Grubbs is going to talk about the financing of it. And then Mike Holmberg with WRA is going to talk about kind of the marketing aspect of it. And I don't want to steal Brian's thunder, but because of recent legislation and compression of rates, this is an excellent time to do what we're doing.
It is. It is. Appreciate y'all having me back this evening. A lot of this is going to be updated material that I will debrief on, getting to the actual analysis for the $10 million that we were asked to bring. So behind tab 1, let's start with just an update of where our interest rates are. The last time I was here, we were assuming interest rates. We were being conservative at the time. And if you'll see this chart called the Bond Buyers Index of Municipal Bonds, you can see what our interest rates have done since that time period. They've done nothing but go lower. So we sold bonds for a district today up in the Dallas area. It was a 30-year bond. They locked in a 3.23 interest rate. So very, very low interest rates. That's part of when we get to the scenario, you're going to see a higher amount than you saw from me last time, but the same INS tax rate impact. It's two parts. One, where you've got lower interest rates that we can assume, and your taxable value is growing a little bit more than we anticipated. So moving on to tab 2, real quick, this is a look at your outstanding voted bond or INS debt service. You've got just the 2 series of bonds outstanding, with column 1 being your fiscal year ending. You've got the 2003 and 2013, 2014 bonds that were sold out of the same election. For your total bond payment there under column 4, at about $1,290,000 per year. Now, again, we talked about this last time. We get this all the time, and I know that you've probably heard of other districts refinancing bonds to save money, just like you refinance a home mortgage. The reason we're not doing anything with your column 2 bonds is because those rates are as low as 1.3 to 3.2. So you really can't refinance, pay the cost of completing the financing, and justify saving any money. Now, you do have bonds that become callable, the 2014 in August of 23. There's nothing we can do with those now, but as we get closer to those dates and times, If we're able to refinance and lower your payment in the future, we will. All right, behind tab 3 is to look at your historical statistics. Everything on this chart in blue is an actual number. Anything in red is an assumed number or preliminary. So real quick, under column 2, this is to look at your net taxable value, going all the way back to 2005, 2006 in the top left corner. So you can see the history of what the tax base has done. You've grown from a tax base of $372 million up to where you were in 18-19 at $777 million. And if you look at the first red number under column 2, you'll see a number of $825 million. That is a number that I am putting as our baseline model to be conservative, and it's based on the preliminary values that the appraisal district has provided your district. They are supposed to certify this figure here, hopefully maybe this week. And so we anticipate that the certified value is going to be higher than what's shown on here. But as a financial advisor to Texas schools, I'm always going to try to lag the values that you end up getting certified. But even at an $825 million tax base, that represents over 6% growth from the prior year. What I'm assuming going forward as part of the analysis that comes up with the tax impact we'll talk about in a moment is the tax base just grows at $25 million per year for the next 3 years and then stops. So that's 3% or less over the last 3 years. That's something that you've been doing. You've been putting on anywhere from 25 to 50 million over the last couple years. So we believe that that assumption is conservative. One thing I'll point out under column 11 is the way the state works, and you're a district that has received state aid when you make your bond payments. You set an INS tax rate that brings in local dollars. You combine those with what the state has been giving you to make your total payment that we just talked about, that $1,290,000 each and every year. The key here under column 11 is the cutoff for receiving state aid is $35, okay? So right now we're a district that's around $32.14. That's nothing more than the tax base for the number of students that you have. It's calculated each and every year. But under these growth assumptions, under column 2, and we're holding your ADA steady, you're essentially going to grow out of it. You've been growing out of it because your tax base is growing and your student count is remaining relatively flat. But we're assuming that with this, you've only got a couple more years of state assistance because you're generating more locally with the property tax base growth. Now columns 15 and 16 are to look at your, what I call your savings accounts, both on the INS side under column 15 and the general fund savings account under column 16. The bottom line here is that you have operated at a very, very healthy level on your general fund balance. Obviously, that's why you're able to complete a $19.4 million project and only ask the voters to pay $10 million of that. So that's pretty uncommon with the districts that I work with to have the ability to do that. You also have a healthy INS fund balance. So the monies under column 15 can only be used to repay debt service. So as you pay the bonds off on these new ones, you have the ability, should you need to draw on these. And we'll talk through and we'll show you how we're dedicating some of those funds as part of this plan of finance. Now, one other thing that's new from what we last talked about is under columns 12, 13, and 14 in red. Under House Bill 3, the legislature is requiring you to drop your M&O tax rate, okay? So you're going from $1.04 to 97 cents in 2019-20. With the November election, you will not set an INS tax rate to pay for those until the following year, 2021. So you're getting a tax rate reduction this year on the M&O side. The INS side, we're assuming, stays steady at the 13.7. But when we talk about a tax rate increase for these bonds, it will increase for 2021 on the INS side. But that's on the heels of a decrease on the M&O side in 1920, and it's my understanding potential decrease again in 2021. So that is not the easiest thing to communicate, but it is a good thing in that we're getting tax rate reduction, and that's something that we'll obviously work with those preparing the information to the voters to really make sure they understand that yes, this is a tax rate increase on the INS side, however, this is on the heels of an M&O tax rate. So when it's all said and done, you may be a district that has $10 million worth of voter approved bonds and has a lower total tax rate between the M&O and the INS side when it's all said and done. Does that make sense? Okay.
That's the point I'd like to make just again is that, you know, it's M&O and INS make up the total. The M&O is going down so much that it's going to equal the 9 pennies that go up on the INS. Basically, M&O is going to go down 9, which is what Brian's forecasting. It'll go down 7 cents the first year and then another 2 probably the next. So basically it's a wash. And so again, that's why we're saying the timing of this is outstanding as far as the total tax rate, what it would do to the voters.
Absolutely.
But we're saying probably.
No, you definitely are getting an M&O
What are
tax
the
rate.
definites? I mean,
The 1 year,
Just the 1 year is definite.
The 1 year is definite. And we're working through right now with consultants and attorneys, because that's the question of the day is in 2021. There are some that are of the opinion that they could be anywhere from another 2 to 5 cents, depending on every district's makeup. And Darryl may be able to speak better on the M&O side than I can, but there is language in there that speaks to a second year M&O tax rate reduction. And it could be that it's more than when you combine the two, than the 9 cents you have to increase the INS side to pay for the bonds. And keep in mind, if you continue to grow at $50 million a year in taxable value, when it comes time to set the INS tax rate, you may not need to go up the full 9 cents. If we're at a lower borrowing cost than I'm assuming, which is very possible, and if you are growing faster and larger amounts than what I'm projecting, you may not need the full 9 pennies on the INS side to make the payments.
But even worst case scenario, with the compression under House Bill 3, and assuming we don't get any further reduction next year, just take that 2 to 5 cents off, you're still only talking about a 2 cent increase if we have to go with the full 9.
That's exactly right. Okay. That's exactly right.
That's a good one.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Those
But these are the baseline assumptions, and wanted to point out the M&O tax rate reduction because on this 4th tab is a look at the actual scenario. This is very similar to what you saw from me last time we visited, with just a few changes, one being the amount. So at the top of page 1, you'll see a $10 million scenario. Again, we're assuming the November election, a 20-year amortization or payback term is similar to what we showed you last time. But the last time the interest rate we were assuming was closer to 4%. I'm assuming a 3.65. What I try to do in planning in the summer months for November elections is try to be 50 to 60 basis points higher, because we're talking about July planning for something that's not going to get set until late December, early January. So we still have some time before we can lock in the interest rate. But this is still about 50 to 60 basis points conservative. So that's why you're able to take on $500,000 more than what we talked about last time, and do so, if you look in the middle of the page, highlighted in yellow, at the same 9 cent INS tax rate increase, which doesn't go into effect until 2021. Now with that, we always do put in the cost to a homeowner for a 9 cent increase. Now again, this is a little different conversation than we're used to having, because we typically aren't talking about M&O tax rate reduction. But if somebody wanted to know a 9 cent increase on the INS side, what does that do approximately to their home values? This is the chart that we prepare. And we may want to modify that when we put out the voter information material, just for planning purposes today, because 2021, if they don't do anything to the M&O, it will be an INS tax rate increase. But that is again on the heels of what you're doing in 1920 right now.
So Brian, would it be possible to have a chart that would show the total tax rate impact as far as like a 2 penny increase that we could show the voters?
I think that would be, I think what we're going to direct a lot of our clients that are having November elections to do is, instead of just having a tax impact chart reflective of what's going on the INS side, because that is the side that pays for the debt service on the bonds to finance the facilities, we're going to do charts that have an M&O tax rate reduction at the same time we illustrate and show the INS, so they can come in and see the net effect of what's going on, and the reality for you is on the INS side.
So Brian, is that a little bit misleading? If we just gave them this chart, it looks a little bit more bleak than what it really would be, because the M&O is going down.
Yeah, I think that's you know, we put this in here only because it will be the 2021 INS tax rate that will be going up. But I think in the voter information material, we need to really spell out what's going on the INS and the M&O side as well. And because it's not something I think that we're gonna have enough insight as to what the state will do with your M&O tax rate in 2021 to be certain to tell them it's going to be a total over the next 2 years of 9 to 10 cents. But we do know for a fact that it is going to go from $1.04 to 97 this year. We know that to be true. So the second page is a look at the cash flows on how we come up with the 9-cent increase on the INS side. Column 2 is the outstanding debt service that we've already looked at. Column 3 represents the $10 million estimated at a borrowing cost of $365. And then you'll see under columns 5 and 6, this is the amount of state aid that you're currently getting, but we've already talked about as your tax base grows, your student count stays the same, you're essentially growing out of it because you need less from the state because you're getting more locally. If that trend were to reverse itself and you got further away from 35, lower, then because you're not collecting enough locally, the state would increase. So it's it's a level playing field type of program for them. And then column 7 is a use of a portion of your INS fund balance. As I mentioned, that INS fund balance savings account that you have is very healthy. So this is just placeholder numbers, approximately $20,000 per year, that you would use if and only if you needed to in order to maintain the INS tax rate under column 11 at that 22.7 cent rate. Oftentimes what happens is we either borrow at a lower interest rate than is assumed, and you outpace the growth under column of 10 that we're figuring, and you probably will not need any, if at all, in the INS fund balance. Should you not have to use that bond that becomes callable in August of 23, that can be used to potentially pay off some of that principal when we get to that time, if you're still sitting on a very healthy INS account at the time. Are there any questions on the cash flows or the scenario? The last section is just a reminder of the timing of the election, nothing you don't already know. Districts are given 2 opportunities to have bond elections, May and November of each year. The deadline for the board to take official action calling for the election is on or before August the 19th, which I believe y'all have a preliminary set for August the 12th. And we're already working with the attorneys, and they're getting the information to prepare the documents in the order that allows you to call for it before that deadline. Any questions?
Brian, you made some complicated things a lot easier to understand.
I appreciate that.
What's your phone number?
They got it. They got it. They got it. Well, the state definitely threw us a lot of curveballs over the session, and we're still trying to dig through and digest. But the good news is that we're bringing down one side of the tax rate while we may be raising it to do some facilities. But overall, it's a minimal impact, if any, to the taxpayers.
Brian, we appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
Part 2 of this is Mike Holmberg with WRA. He's going to talk to us about, well, how do you inform the public? How do you make sure they know what all is going on to where they have an accurate picture of what we're trying to do? And he handed out or is going to hand out a little packet.
Put that Chrome button right there too. Met with Dr. Toller just a few weeks ago. We just kind of talked about kind of a mock schedule, and this is kind of just some. Right now, I kind of consider this as well, like we're doing a 75% set with our architecture team. This is kind of the same thing with us on the marketing side. This is, like I said, the part 1 when we met a few weeks ago. My ultimate goal is to help just inform the electorate. The yes or no, between someone walking in to vote yes or no, I want them to be informed about what the scope of the bond is, what is the tax impact, all the ins and outs of how this affects them as a taxpayer. How we do this is several pieces. One, we're going to start with just a website. This is just the framework we've started to build right now. This is in anticipation of you calling a bond election on August 12th. So we want to have all these materials kind of ready to go and teed up if in fact you do call an election. One of the biggest pieces we'll do is have a PR release for Dr. Pollard for the paper, announcing the bond, having all those pieces into it that will coincide with a full website that'll have all the scope, FAQs, any events that we'll have, and all the voting pieces. In coordination with that, you'll see kind of a breakout of a mock schedule. I consider kind of week 1 August. And so this is all to make sure that we have some of these pieces slowly roll out. And my intention during this process is to reach as many people in different medias as possible. So a website, flyers, some videos, social media campaigns. We really want to layer this communication just so that people that know can get this information and absorb it the way they want to. Some of the pieces that we'll do not only will coincide with this, and we'll just kind of pass these down, will be kind of a 1-sheet postcard that we can be mailed out as well. That'll have all the particulars, voting information, any tax impact, some basic information, just as a quick 1-sheeter. This is a larger, that coincides with that, which is more of a handout that'll have some of the renderings that we did, the floor plan, the main scope, tax impact, and then voting information, and this could also be mailed as well. It really just depends on how when we get to actually sending out a mailer, what we want to be sending out, if we think that this is all the information, or if we're going to post this in, through the school district or at local businesses, churches, etc. We'll let you go that way as well. The great thing about this process right now is that we do have so many great visuals and a great floor plan from the team. It really does help during this process. During a lot of bond campaigns, it's more of a kind of a scope of, hey, a new elementary, or a new high school or stadium, what have you, and it's usually all that design work is done after the fact. This is a great time that we can really showcase exactly what the electric is going to be getting, your voters are going to be paying for. So I think this is a really exciting time to showcase these visuals. This last piece would be a poster that's like a 2x3 that will have the very similar information that we'll place on poster board and put in all the school vestibules, and then have some extras that we can post at local businesses, Chamber of Commerce, and then have actually a couple extra that we can take to sporting events. During this campaign, we'll also build a full presentation for Dr. Pollard that he will go and present to different schools, the PTO. It'll basically be this information just expanded upon, just so we can kind of talk about it at a town hall event, different pieces throughout the community. Again, reaching out to the community, educating them is really my ultimate goal. During the social media campaign, we do a thing called Bond Fact Friday. So every Friday during the campaign, we'll have maybe we'll run a video, or we'll talk about tax impact, or what this is going to do for the kids, and what new programs are going to have, or vice versa. There's about different programs. We want to really get layer some of that information, especially through social media, just so we can kind of touch all the bases of the campaign. You can see that through this schedule, really does kind of encompass all the things that I've just kind of talked about, of making sure that we reach out to all of your social groups and civic groups, all your teachers, your administrators, just so that everybody kind of has a really broad-based understanding of what exactly the bond program encompasses. The last bit is working with basically a political action committee. I really do suggest you all had a very active one your last bond campaign, reaching out to some of those folks. We can help build all types of vote yes materials for them, but having some of that institutional knowledge, if we know some folks that were on that committee, would be great to bring them back, since it was such a great group, and obviously passed with a large approval. Having some of those folks that were part of that original committee would be great, and will help kind of organize some of those pieces as well. One thing I was going to mention, during some of these pieces that we built, some of this information is still being blocked out. This is more of once we get all the details of going into the tax impact, we'll make sure that these will be finalized. And this is more of just a mock or draft.
Mike and I talked about, it's important to not rest on your laurels. We've passed things in the past very easily, but at the same time, communities right close to us have bonds that have failed miserably. And so it's important to get the word out, and if you shoot people straight and don't come across as a snake oil salesman and just give them the facts, Gatesville's a very supportive community. We see that every year with Food for Families. We trounce all the neighboring towns as far as what we give. And so when it comes to the kids, if they know what the project's about, I feel confident they'll support us.
Yeah, again, ultimately, this is my goal here is education, showing them exactly what they're getting, how much it's going to cost, and just presenting it that way and not presenting it in a slick manner, I guess.
Snake oil.
Snake oil.
Charlatan. Yeah.
I think with those pieces, the website, social media campaign, with some print materials, I think will be a very solid campaign. And I think we want to be very proud.
I think it's very smart of WRA to have someone like Mike to help school districts with this sort of thing. Because if you leave this to just not do it, it can come back to haunt you. So
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
In fact, he needs a
Smart maneuver on their part.
did y'all have any other questions for Mike or Brian? Well, Brian's gone. So
I can be Brian too.
yeah.
Only question is, on there it says 9 million. Is it gonna be 9 million or 10?
Well, that was just blocked out from.
That's what I
yeah,
figured.
yes, ma'am. Same thing with the tax impact chart. That was basically just saying this is where some of these pieces go. So
Okay.
I know all those were going to
Yeah.
be in flux. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to be sure.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have the exact penny. Yeah, and this is one of the things I'll make sure that when we go through this cycle of getting all this material, this will be not only double check with the school district, our team, before this is even released, we'll have many sets of eyes and several rounds of revisions and before we pull the trigger, because again, I want to make sure that anything that goes out the front door is exactly right, because you can't pull it back.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of our WRA friends. I think that was your last item for the night. So if you guys are wanting to exit, we don't blame you. And thank you as well. But
Thank
you're,
y'all for
you're
coming.
welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Good information. I guess I'll go home and dine with my spouse. She's texting me when I know where I'm at. I failed to tell her that I'm going to Gatesville, and so she's kind of wondering where I'm at.
Be careful.
Good to see you. Thanks for everything.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Drive safe. Quite a program. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
It's from like.
Oh, yeah, it's 10 o'clock. I was like, he's not gonna be here.
So we are now going to be discussing the attendance data.
I just come prepared.
And the truancy initiative.
Okay, so we'll keep on plugging along. This is a quick update on data on attendance and truancy, and so that has been something that we need to improve. And so attendance, we've made a little chart here. We went up for the year 0.4 percentage points, so that was good, but as you can tell, we're still down a little bit overall from the previous years. And so we, in the spring, remember we brainstormed some more positive types of things. Well, we also, Mr. Harper and I met with Coy Latham and Brandon Bell, and we're trying to come up with also, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, the more punitive side. And so we have a plan to be more diligent in the paperwork, hopefully have our SROs be more active in that. And so once they start hitting those milestones where they've missed 3 or 5 or 7 and they're racking up those unexcused absences, going ahead and doing the paperwork, we're warning them, pleading with them, please come to school, but if they hit a certain amount, that's when we'll file them. And so we hate to do that, but that's also related directly to our funding, and if you're not in school, you can't learn. And so it's pretty basic. And so we're trying to have a positive, a lot of positive incentives too, but we also have to have, unfortunately, that a little bit more negative incentive to also come to school. And Mr. Harper, in fact, is going to be having a mandatory parent meeting with all the kids who missed more than 10% of school before they get their schedule. And so if you want your schedule, you're going to have to meet with Mr. Harper. It's only 10-15 minutes, but it's going to be a little spiel about come to school. You didn't come to school last year like you should have. And so, Scott, you want to add anything else to it?
Yeah, we'll be working with Coy Latham, and Brandon Bell will be there as well. And in order for the younger grades to meet their teacher or the older grades get their schedule, they're going to have to go and attend this attendance meeting. And then if they don't attend that, they're going to have to get a release form, signed off by us at the district to say that I've heard the spill, I know how important attendance is, and then we'll sign that release form. Then they'll be able to get their schedule or meet the teacher. Then a couple of things from our meeting, whenever they decriminalized truancy back in 2015, 2016, and made it, it's not criminal, it's punitive, civil case, it took away some of their teeth that they could have as far as consequences. And one of the problems they have is not being able to assign community service because there's not a lot of places to have people work off community service. And so we're working on a program so that they can serve that here at school. And so we're gonna have to provide a list for them, for COI, to be able to say, okay, this is what we'll adjudicate. You'll have to do this many hours of community service, and you're gonna do it at the school. And then it's gonna be our responsibility to have those parents come in and track what they do. And that just provided something for them that they didn't have before. And I told them we want to keep that just for the truancy cases, for them to assign people here, but it's something that they didn't have whenever they decriminalized it. So we're hoping that these things will give them a little bit more teeth, and we'll be able to affect more parents to get their kids to school.
So in a nutshell, we're trying, especially with the bookends, the little ones and the big ones. The ones in the middle do fairly well, but it's the really young ones at primary and the older ones at the high school where they had the rates over the year that were lower. And so we've got to just educate the parents and the kids. You got to come to school.
So in primary, the law, will it go after the parent?
Yeah, right now we can't go after the student at all. It's all, we have to go against the parent.
All the way up to high school?
All the way up to high school. And so it's parent contributing to non-attendance. And so then that's the statute that they'll be filed under. And then they have to go in and plead their case and say why they can't get them there and go through those hoops. And we told them that we're going to increase the amount that we're filing on, and hopefully giving them that option of more community service, they'll be able to take more action on it.
On a daily basis, are calling parents and asking why they're not in school?
Yes, sir. Well, we have we have the automated system that gives them a call, say, you're not here at school. And some parents will call us back and say, well, my kid's supposed to be at school, but it doesn't meet those chronically absent ones, because they get that call and they're just ignoring it. And so we have to be able to separate those chronic absentee ones from the others. And we know who they are year by year. And so now we're going to start tracking them, hit them at the very beginning of school with these extra measures to maybe jumpstart their attention to getting their kids at school.
And our vision for the SRO is really to do more of that. Calling, home visits, things like that.
You talk about an automated phone call. Would we have more luck with a real person on the telephone?
Possibly. Charles can tell you about making those phone calls, how many times he connected or didn't connect or couldn't get through, numbers worked or didn't work, because that's,
Yeah, it's hard to get through sometimes because parents at work. I mean, I hate to bother any parent at work, to be honest, but I'd send out letters after a while. But I know that last year I was here, I know I got a bunch of kids attending school that wouldn't have been here otherwise. And I was K8.
Rob, you're right, that human touch, if you know that it's not just a robot, it's someone that's...
When I answer the phone and it's a machine, I don't care what they're selling, I'm done. Either I lay it down and let them do their spiel while I go and do what I was doing. Just that age of technology, I guess everything is automated.
What's your service you're talking about at school?
Community service. The easiest one is picking up trash, but they can clean the cafeteria, they can work in the building, around the buildings. We have to make it around their work schedule, so maybe working the gate, not handling money, but being able to work with other people, having them work tournaments. We're just kind of gathering a bunch of ideas, and then we'll start, okay, now how are we going to supervise this? That's going to be another thing to make sure, but right now it's not all fleshed out.
It's a good idea.
Well, we're hoping that, some kids don't care if their parents get in trouble. And so if the parent has to come up to school and the kid sees their parent having to pick up trash or something like that, maybe that's a little extra incentive to, work with the parent on getting to school. Because a lot of the reasons they don't come, their parent can't make them.
Any other questions? Just an informational item.
Okay. We'll move on to the superintendent's scholars program.
So really, the Superintendent Scholars Program is something I've been thinking about doing for a couple years now, and really, in thinking about David Bryan tonight, this is really geared towards the David Bryans of the world, the ones that in the early grades make a fairly decent score on their PSAT, targeting those kids and say, okay, let's do some study. You know, let's go on Khan Academy and let's do the PSAT review. Let's keep practicing so when we take the real thing, we can get as high a score as we possibly can. And so that's really the emphasis behind this. It's not real complicated. It's basically targeting and identifying kids who are you know, attempting these tests and then saying, okay, you scored a certain amount, let's get together, let's have a session, let's practice. And it's also really kind of exposing them to college. You know, some of these kids may be first generation potential college kids. And so I'd like for us to Skype and FaceTime some colleges other than just the typical ones around here. You know, could we Skype, you know, somewhere out of state or something that might expose them to something different. And so it's just another attempt to try to get our kids different experiences and hopefully get them in the habit of studying a little bit more and possibly getting some better scholarships. And so, you know, it's been a long time since we've had a National Merit Scholar and or a Hispanic Scholar or all those different things where there's some pretty big scholarships that go with high achievement on those tests. And so I'm going to work with the counselors and the principals to identify some of these kids and get them together and start working on, you know, setting some goals and practicing and going from there. So hopefully it will be an honor for them to be in the group and have a little recognition and kind of go from there. Any questions about that?
Appreciate you addressing that population, because a lot of times it's left to its own devices.
It's kind of overlooked because they're going to be okay with or without us, but they'll be even better if we give them some attention. So
Thank you.
Some kids don't think about the test till the night before.
yeah, that's true. So the next one up, yes, CTE numbers. You guys had asked, where are our class counts like in the CTE courses? So Shane and Yancey have been poring over the numbers to see what the class counts look like in your welding and automotive and all those different CTE classes.
Just on your information sheet there, you can kind of look based on our CTE pathways for each program, what the total overall numbers were in from 2018 to 2019 projected for this coming school year. So that first number there for business was 48 for the class for 2018, and then projected this year is about 65. So that's what those numbers mean. And we could put another little sheet in there, just kind of gives you a rundown of preliminary right now, because there still has to be some balancing of schedules of what each program and their actual class period counts would look like going into next year. So you can see some of our programs, the numbers have gone up, some of them have gone down, and that's going to fluctuate from year to year depending on what that student's interests might be. So does anybody have any questions about those?
We're adequately staffed in each one of these pathways to handle that many kids?
I believe so. You know, you can kind of look there, you know, probably thinking about the shop classes, you know, Peanuts sitting at about 18, is that right? 16, 18 per class. Mr. Connolly's sitting at about 20 on those bigger classes. 16. He's got a class of 21.
So you still have an aide?
Yeah, he's still got the aide, and those aides will, you know, Billy Bob will go in there on those bigger classes. And then,
Does automotive get an aide?
He rotated last year primarily between the welding and the construction because there were new teachers. Started out the year between all three of them, and then Mr. Blanchard felt like he could be successful without Mr. Ford, and so he kind of rotated. But he is available for all three, primarily.
So Mr. Ford, if there's a class that's larger than one or the other, then that may be where he goes for support.
Because we haven't leveled yet, we don't know exactly where he's going to be. Like it shows Mr. Blanchard with a class of 21. Well, that's before we've even moved any students around, schedule changes. So once we get all that information, we'll decide where Mr. Ford goes.
Yeah, because I guess you just finished master schedule last week. So once counselors get back on schedule, go through and balance some classes out.
Did you say Peanut went to the Finish Masters class?
He did.
How'd that go?
I think it went well. I think he went last month.
Good.
So they're gonna come before school starts and get the paint.
I'm anxious to see that get going.
Paint put in the machines, so the computer's installed, everything's done except for the paint needs to go in, so. And hopefully they poured the slab on the, greenhouse on Saturday, so the builder for Stubby should be here any day. He's supposed to be here today, but I think he's behind a few days. Is that right, Scott? That's right. Behind a few days, so that, we got a little behind schedule just because of drainage.
How'd you come out on that? The drainage?
We're all good now.
What'd you have to do?
They raised the slab and the pad up.
Yeah,
And
they
that
had to
cured
raise
it?
It's like
And then they opened that drain that'll go into that ditch that's across the road. Got a smaller drain, they got that opened up.
And that made them happy.
Yeah, took some time though, so.
What they do with
We're a little behind
the big
schedule.
drainage that was there in
Yeah,
the
it's-
originally?
It's still there. Right, it's still
Yeah.
there.
But slabs
It's not
on top
covered.
of it?
No.
Okay. You just rerouted it?
It's just on the north end of the building.
Oh, okay.
So,
But it should be through by school, when school starts.
should be, I mean, after, they've gotta build it, put it on the pad, and then they've gotta put then the concrete guys have gotta come back and put the walkway around it, and then put the driveways, and then they'll need to do some dirt work around it, and then we'll need to get the fence put around it, and then get a building, and there's still some things going that we still need to do, but it's coming along. For the most part, it'll be ready by the time school starts.
Any other questions about CTE, class counts? Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we're moving on to the Fine Arts Handbook. Sanchez?
Jose has been working diligently in all of his free time.
Free time.
So, good evening. Thank you so much. You're actually getting me out of standing outside in the heat with the marching band kids right now. So I've been working on this handbook, and part of the reason for the handbook, and this is primarily for the high school at this point in time, is because whenever we did come on staff, pretty much the whole entire fine arts department was brand new, between art, theater, choir, and the whole entire band staff. So there was a lot of information that was not readily available to us without having to go down certain rabbit holes. I have our mission, our vision. I even have points of contact in this handbook, so that way there's a clear understanding of who is actually over which program. And when I first got here as director of bands, understanding who I needed to turn in a purchase request to was foreign to me, so understanding who those people are. And I'm actually going to have, on our points of contact, I'm going to give a brief description of everybody's roles, or like the people you need to actually contact with what you need to actually do. So like Stephanie Bird is the person you contact for purchase requisitions, and the person who approves a lot of those budget items is Dale Frazier, which those are important people for every single department head to actually know. And so that was a huge thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about. Financial, that was another part. Instead of having to bug Mr. Frazier a whole lot, I kind of did an outline of how you should actually do a requisition and how to look up those funds and go through that process, and even give kind of a guideline of what those timelines are for, just because it does take 2 to 3 weeks for those things to get all the way to a manufacturer and get those items back in. And a lot of teachers and a lot of people don't actually understand that, so giving that kind of a written document, it makes it a little bit easier, and actually makes our administration a lot happier than what they are, because I know the dreaded email from Daryl Frazier is something that we all strive not to get. And so like this is something that I think like
You're feeling the love, sir.
And I love Daryl, but the worst thing for me, honestly, I'm a people pleaser. When I get an email from Daryl saying, you did something wrong. I'm just like, I'm really sorry. And so anything I can do to like help reduce that, even to put it into writing, I'm going to do. And so it even goes over like special playoff codes. And so it's just a little bit more accessible for our fine arts programs. Even went through into like booster clubs and having an understanding of what you can do with booster clubs and what you can do with booster clubs. Because like with me being in the band department, we have a booster club that's very involved. The choir program's getting their booster club really involved now, and so those are some things that are really important. How to handle their like types of money, receipts, those just types of things that sometimes, like as a young teacher or somebody who's coming onto the staff, just kind of don't know the protocols of the school district, and so that would be really helpful. Same thing with purchase requisitions, how long they should be. How they should not be outstanding, what the timelines is. Daryl generally likes things not being purchased after a certain month, and then understanding that our fiscal year ends in technically August and our new one starts on September 1st, so that's outlined as well. We have a fine arts calendar that I am in control of, and kind of making sure we have biannually meetings, and it kind of outlines what you have to do to make sure that you get onto the calendar, and everything that's posted to the calendar is actually posted up to the Gatesville ISD website as well. Big part of that is understanding copyright law. Every single fine arts program has to deal with copyright law and understanding those types of things. One of the things I discovered this past year, because we were doing a lot of pop tunes, ISDs are considered in a copyright halo. That's why whenever we do like public broadcasts of music over in the stadium, we do not have to pay copyright fees, versus if we went across the street and did the same thing, we could technically be sued. So there's like certain understandings of what a copyright halo is, and for educational uses, and so that I put down a breakdown of where people can go and research what copyright law is and how to really find that, so it's a little bit more accessible for them. And then later on, as school gets closer and everyone's back on staff, I'm going to meet with every single department and kind of give a breakdown of like the expectations. So on our band page, I put that we're one of the largest student organizations. We're very much a student spirit organization, and I kind of put down our expectations throughout the school year, the things we're required to do, extracurricular things that we have to do, meetings that we have to go to, whether or not we have a booster club, because sometimes some places don't have booster clubs, whether or not the band program or the choir program or theater program have a handbook as well as an activity count. And so kind of go through our class responsibilities as well. So I'm going to be doing that for every single program that's inside the Fine Arts Department with choir, art, and theater. And then eventually I would like to trickle that down into the junior high, into the intermediate systems. So that way, whenever there is a changeover in staff, that it's a little bit easier for a staff member within our programs, because fine arts is a little bit different that in the aspect of like purchase requisitions and actually having to go into the financial side versus regular classroom teachers versus department heads. So that's kind of, this is a working document, but I just wanted to make sure I shared kind of the progress in which this is going. Does anybody have any questions?
Did it work? Do you ever sleep?
Not very much.
It's a lot of work.
It was very detailed.
Very well organized.
Very
Thank you. There's still a lot of work to do, and I'm going to try and have it done before marching season gets really out of hand, which is today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Jose's been a good mentor.
Mr. Sanchez,
Jose, one last thing.
I have a bumper sticker for you that I found on a little trip I just took.
Oh.
That's cute.
Thank you so
What's
much.
it say?
All right, I'm going to go to marching
Oh, it
rehearsal.
says,
TBA this week?
Yes, sir.
Enjoy.
So we have Earth without art is just which is true.
Action items.
Yes, release of earnest money and termination of contract with CBD Realty.
So all the way back in 2017, the board entered into an agreement to sell some land to CBD Realty. And so the land was about 23,000 square feet right next to Burger King. And so it was going to be sold for $150,000. And then there was a feasibility period where they had a certain amount of time to look at things like drainage and things that we've been talking about tonight. And so ultimately they were going to build a Captain D's there. Well, the district signed an extension to extend that feasibility period out to August 11th, 2018, and we signed another one to March 15th, 2019, and CBD just could not close on the deal. They could not, and we called them, we talked to them, we actually initiated a lot of the phone calls and say, hey, where are we at on this? And it was just dragging on and on and on. And so they basically were in breach of contract, and so the contract was terminated. Hopefully for them, they can find some land somewhere else here in Gatesville. We'd love to have a Captain D's, but it's just not, they couldn't finish the deal here with our land, and so that's unfortunate. So there was earnest money of $4,000 in the account. Our attorney's fees of working with them was about $1,100, so we're still up on the net. And our attorney actually said, you know, in theory, you could go after attorney's fees, but we don't recommend that. It would just prolong all this. And so tonight, I'm recommending to the board that you allow, that you go ahead and sign the release of earnest money of $4,000, which also, just FYI, relinquishes our right to seek attorney's fees. It would end it totally and forever.
And this is already signed by their...
It's been signed by them. It's already in the...
What about money against that?
The way they've done everything, yeah.
So you've heard the recommendation, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Rob, seconded by David, any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay. All right, the MOU with Freedom Marines Council.
Yes, we're about to embark upon hopefully a really good partnership with a local, right down the road in McGregor, counseling firm. It's called Freedom Reigns, and I've known the CEO of that business for many, many years, Lori Rockwood. She was a longtime counselor and CTE director in Belton. And so she approached us and knew that we'd been hiring some social workers, and we're looking more at the social and mental aspect of this. And so she said, Barrett, in cases of when your counselors come across an extreme case of trauma, or neglect, or abuse, something that just goes beyond the scope of what you feel comfortable doing, let me know. Then her team would come in, meet with the parents, hopefully have them sign the release for her counselors to work with them after hours or during the school day at no cost to us. She bills either Medicaid or the family's insurance. And so there are instances where we encounter situations where the abuse, neglect is so severe it really goes beyond what our counselors feel comfortable doing, or just the time aspect. And so Lori has a team of counselors that are, they specialize in anxiety, depression, cutting, all those different things that a lot of young people struggle with right now. And so she developed a little MOU for us, if you will allow me to sign it, to where a therapist from Freedom Reigns would be on our campuses 2 days each week to work with students. The sessions are typically about 50 minutes in length, and again, they would bill Medicaid or the family's insurance, so there's no cost to us. And so she's very experienced in all the protocol of, okay, let's meet with the parents first, let's get the waiver, and then go from there. And so if you guys have any questions, let me know, but I would recommend that the board approve the MOU so that we can sign that and have our students get some extra counseling if they need it.
Pre-K-12.
You've heard the recommendation, is there a motion? Cheyenne, second? John, any questions? So we don't have any liability or anything? So
No, it's all, they're fully,
it's
all in there.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And like most MOUs, you can terminate at any point.
Yeah.
You can say.
Now we're going to the property and casualty insurance renewal.
Daryl?
Okay.
Mr. Frazier.
We all had insurance until you needed it. That's pretty much the way to go, isn't it? You pay those insurance premiums.
district this size, our casualty and property and casualty insurance is a pretty significant piece of business that we do transact each year. And this certainly goes well beyond the $50,000 realm in which the board is required to approve. We have been with a company called PCAT, Property Casualty Alliance of Texas, for quite a few years. This is one of the big players in schools in Texas, along with TASB. And we have received their renewal rates for next year. And I was expecting a large increase. This came in a little larger than I was expecting. But due to the environment of property and casualty losses in the state of Texas, with a lot of the storms that we've experienced both in this region as well as down south, these property and casualty rates are just going through the roof and actually are very difficult to obtain coverage. 2 years ago when we submitted this for bids, we only received 2 bids. One was PCAT and the other one was TASB. TASB's rate then, 2 years ago, was significantly higher than PCAT. And assuming that they have been probably passing along 15–20% increase at the very least, each year they would still be higher than what PCAT is offering. So they're coming in at a total premium of $209,132 for next fiscal year, which is about a 30% increase, or around a $40,000 increase in premium. The coverages remain the same. We have about a 13% increase in the valuation of our property. And I think there was one deductible that went up. That's the deductible for property wind and hail. Went from $125 per occurrence to $250, but pretty much the rest of the schedules remain the same as last year. So what we've been proposed is a 3-year agreement where the next 2 years after this one, the increases will be limited to 10%, no more than 10%, or else we will have the right to cancel the premium, cancel the policy. If we cancel the policy currently, we're subject to a penalty of around $30,000. So it's pretty costly at this point to cancel the policy. And more than likely, our only other option would have been TASB, would have been higher anyway. So in view of knowledge of the insurance business and what's going on in the state of Texas, PCAT's been really good to us. TASB certainly is a very good option, but they have been expensive in the last few years. I recommend, and the board, the management recommends that we go ahead and sign on with PCAT for renewal for next year under the 3-year term. That would be a total premium of $209,132. And I would be glad to answer any questions. We have pretty much, I think, the entire packet that was inserted into your board book for your review. So there's 2 things that we would be approving. One is a renewal of the what's called the interlocal agreement with PCAT. That's on page 82 of your board book, along with the 3-year, which is on page 90 of your board book. The agreement we have with PCAT is under what's called an interlocal agreement, and this is one of the procurement avenues that we have available, and we have determined to use that avenue, which bypasses the need to go for bids. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So this is insurance on our buildings, correct?
Buildings, vehicles, liability.
So when
everything.
we build this new high school, insurance gonna
Once
go
it's
up each
finished,
year?
it'll, yes.
Yeah,
But that's, gonna be next year.
next year, yeah, or the next.
It won't impact this year.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? You've heard the recommendation to go with PCAT. Is there a motion? David, second. Cheyenne. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I think you're next.
I would prefer having the interlocal agreement signed by the board president, if that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Because it's one of those that has to be approved by the board.
Okay.
So normally. Thank you.
That means she'll pay if we don't.
All right.
Ready for the next one?
Yes, we are. You're
Okay.
next.
All right, next one starts on page 92. And this is the proposed 2019-2020 property tax rates. Brian Grubbs kind of alluded to that in his presentation tonight. And what we're doing here tonight is we're giving you, for management, we're giving you the rate that we would like to propose at the August board meeting when you're going to set the rate officially. Because we will put together a release for the newspaper prior to that August meeting, and it'll have these rates in that release. So in the past, we said, well, this is something really that the board needs to approve before it actually hits the paper and goes to the public. So this is kind of what we're doing here. So you already know that because of HB3, that we have a tax compression next year from $1.04 to 97 cents on the M&O side. And we're looking at currently maybe $1.35. It's not fully determined, but that's kind of an estimate. I think Brian mentioned maybe 2 cents would be the compression next year, but that's not for sure at this point. But we probably are looking at some decrease in the M&O a year from now as well. We want to maintain the INS rate at the 13.7 that it is currently, and so that will bring us to a total tax rate of $1.107 that we will be presenting to the public, and that we will be asking you to approve at that last August meeting.
Questions? Okay. So, you're
Motion to
recommending
approve.
that? Pardon?
Motion to approve.
You've heard well, let's see, the district management recommends setting a proposed property tax rate effective for 2019-2020 school year of 97 M&O and 0.137 INS for a total tax rate of 110.7. Just what he said. Is there a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay, John, seconded by Rob. Any more questions for Mr. Frazier? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you.
State legislature's had a busy session this year. A lot of things have come out of this legislature. HB3 is huge for school districts. All right, this next item is the raises that management is asking the board to approve for 2019-2020. And this information starts on page 93 of your board book. The big thing here is that basically Gatesville ISD will be receiving around $2 million in increased revenues, both from the state and from local taxes. That should be approximately our revenue increase. There are some, one of the big intents of the legislature was to improve teacher salaries. And so we are mandated to use a good portion of this, and there's a certain percentage that we have to use for teacher salaries, and they want that focused on those with experience greater than 5 years. So they specifically have told us, given us directive, they're giving us the money, and they're telling us how to use it. So it goes for teachers, it goes for nurses, counselors, and librarians in that same group, which is a little over 50% of our employee group. And what we have done is we have studied their requirements. We have conducted again, as we did 3 years ago, a salary survey based upon the TASB salary results that they publish each year. We want to see where we stand vis-a-vis all the different positions that we have here in our district up against the market values. We've also set a minimum of 2%. We didn't want any personnel receiving less than 2% raise. And I think that we had mentioned this in the last board meeting, that our target amount was $1.25 million for the total cost of the increase in compensation. So that has been completed. And what we've come up with as a management group is on page 94. The heart of it is the teacher pay scale.
And basically the state came up with a new pay scale. And so they've actually kind of done what they wanted us to do anyway by just increasing the pay scale, the minimum pay scale, because you have to at least adopt that. So we're adopting the minimum pay scale that's required, and then we're going $1,000 over on every step, 1 to 20. They stop at step 20, and last 3 years ago, we increased those steps by 1 a year. So now we're at step 30 here in our district. And so this includes adopting the pay scale from the state, the minimum scale, adding $1,000 at each step, 0 to 20, and then on 21 to 30, adding a $50 a month raise. And so you'll see as it grows into the chart down here, your increase becomes more. Like your GISD over minimum is at year 30 is 7,000, whereas at 0 it's 1,000. So that's the effect of that. Now on the next page is a summation of the cost of providing these increases. The required groups were the first 2 groups right there: teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. And so you see that we have about 800,000 or 900,000 actually that's earmarked of the 1.25 toward teachers and counselors, the required group, and their raises are averaging a little over 8%. We have a technology group, auxiliary, the paras, the admin, and then the total, and then we had an approximate value of 10% on the benefits that gets us about 1.2, and our target was 1.25. So we're well within the 1.25. I think we have done very well as a school district to provide good compensation increases to most of our folks, actually. The admin group is the one that received the smallest at 2.5%, and everybody's taken care of one way or another. So we worked on this quite hard, didn't we? And it was pretty tough. Of course, again, we're balancing what the state was requiring us to do. We're balancing what is the salary survey and what does the market look like, and what can we afford. That too. And I think we pretty well said at 1.25 was the maximum that we could possibly earmark to the compensation increases and still be able to come up with a reasonable budget that we're currently still working on. But we wanted, for one thing, not to have to put $500,000 in the fund balance next year and go ahead and put that in the regular budget. So you add that 500 to $1.25 million, and that's going to take a pretty good chunk out of that $2 million. So if you have any questions, I can certainly be happy to entertain your questions about this schedule and anything else that you might want to ask.
Any questions?
Janitors, were they included? Janitors, maintenance men, were included in this? What did they come under?
Auxiliary?
Auxiliary, okay. Good.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? David? Second? Charles? All those, any other questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you, none opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Good job. Group of employees.
A lot of work.
They're all working very hard on that.
All right, the next item
Will be happy about that.
Oh, yeah.
is page 96. And about 5 years ago, we entered into a 5-year lease agreement for our Xerox copiers. At that time, we submitted that to bids, and the winning bid came in from Parsons Office Systems, which is out of Waco, and Xerox Equipment. They made an offer, I guess, that we couldn't refuse. It was a great offer. Xerox cut some corners, and we got some great equipment at a good price. And it was under our 5-year lease. We have now currently about 34 copiers because we bought a few since that original lease. And what we're proposing as management, what we do here, this lease expires August, is our last lease payment, is that we do a multi-year replacement of our copiers based on need. And so we have a plan to do phase one, which is the most expensive part of the phases, which would be about $100,000, by putting a high-speed and heavy-duty production machine at all campuses, in addition to what they already have. If you know, one of the big things about copiers is that teachers depend on those things quite a bit more than you can imagine. As Dr. Potter recently found out in one of his superintendent committees, when they were talking about the need for some copiers that work better. So we know which the problem copiers were. We've identified them. They were, some of them were problematic, but also getting at the end of their useful life. And we put a lot of copies on those machines. So we studied our needs, came up with a need for one heavy-duty one at each campus, that's 5, and then 3 others, a total of 8 copiers, which run about $100,000. And we'll be purchasing those through the NJPA or Sourcewell procurement group. So that satisfies the need to do any bidding, as long as we can get it through one of those contracts. And Parsons will again service the contract with Xerox, and we will have these ordered, if you approve, for delivery and payment after September 1. So we don't want these things on our books until next fiscal year, and we'll be sure to budget that $100,000 in next year's budget instead of having to do a lease, so we don't have to actually borrow the money to do it. So we'll pay cash as we go, from this point forward, instead of doing one big lease. You have any questions about this proposal? Yes, sir.
Is the purchase a better program than the lease program? I mean, before we leased.
A lease is basically just financing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically all you're doing with a lease. You're just financing it. And so if you have the money, you don't need to do a lease and pay the interest. And the interest would probably be around the 5–6% if we did a lease. So I would rather see the lease go away, and when this last payment is made in August, that on our audit report, we don't have a lease to report as a debt obligation. So it actually helps our debt obligation reporting that we don't have that debt.
You're just avoiding the finance is what it is.
Of course, they're standing behind the equipment. They're going to guarantee the equipment. And if you do get a lemon, like I think we did get 1 or 2 lemons.
I was wondering about the residual value at the end of that 5 years. When they take those machines away, if you own them, what do you do with them at the end of 5 years?
Well, at the residual value, usually they want you to pay them to come get them. That's pretty typical. Of course, we're only replacing 8, and they're going to be pretty worn out machines.
They want you to pay them to come get their machines off of your property?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? Like getting that
We got
back.
one of these machines that's stored over there right now. It's been there probably for a year. That was at the intermediate school. It's been over at the Hillside property. It's sitting there in storage. It was so bad. But really, they're not worth anything. And a lot of times you almost have to pay them to come get them.
So basically, at the end of a 5-year lease, there is no residual value to the machine.
Very small. But, we have a lot of copiers that are performing quite well. And so, they're not end of life, and there's no need to replace them. So instead of coming here and wholesale replacing all 34 copiers, we got a lot of copiers that are still got life in them. And now that we've paid them off, we're not paying anything on them other than just the meter clicks.
I'm assuming.
I think the teachers will be happy with what they're going to get here. They're going to be good machines, heavier duty than what we had before.
Assuming 5 of the 8 are in the workrooms?
5, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Anybody else?
I don't want Dr. Potter getting any more complaints in the superintendent advisory committees.
I just pass them on to Daryl. No, I think the teachers will be happy.
And Parsons has treated us very well. Parsons and Xerox. They actually gave us 3 machines last year, 3 big machines, valued probably about $4,000 each. But they realized even then that, you know, that we're getting a lot of complaints on some of those problematic copiers. And they came in and actually donated 3 of the big machines about a year ago. This is last summer when they did that. That just shows you the kind of commitment they have for us. And as long as they're able to give us this kind of service, we're going to stay with them if we can, if we can.
So do you have to pay for their services to come in and?
We pay a meter click charge. That charge is for the maintenance and the supplies. So in other words, we don't buy any supplies, we don't buy any toner. Anytime that needs toner, they send us the toner for free, and it's all part of the meter click. And the meter clicks are pretty small amount. Yeah. So all we've had the last 5 years, we've had the lease payment, which is now going to go away, and then we had the meter clicks, which typically runs $3,000 to $4,000 a month, I think, for our meter clicks. A little bit less than this summer, but you've probably seen that on your check runs. Parsons about $3,000 to $4,000 a month.
So that will go away.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not going to go away. The lease payment, which is about $2,800, I think, somewhere in that range, that will go away. Yeah. But again, this is a very important purchase for our staff. They depend on this stuff. You can ask these principals. Right, principals?
Okay, you've heard the recommendation for the purchase. Is there a motion? David, seconded. Linda. All those, any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Frazier. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next item is
Mr. Webb.
somebody else. Shane?
I'm not asking for money.
Not asking for money?
No money.
What?
This is just a carryover from last month because we did not have the MOU, memorandum of understanding from CTC yet. So this is just to approve for us and our students to be able to use CTC as our dual credit provider for our kids to be able to take dual credit classes on campus at Gatesville High School. So I'm just recommending the Gatesville ISD Board of Trustees approve the MOU and dual credit agreement with CTC so that Gatesville High School's students can continue to use and take advantage of these courses.
Who buys the books?
The students do.
The students do.
Students do. Now we still pay $100 per course per kid.
Why can't the district buy the books?
They
Out of your money through your textbook account?
We can purchase out of high school allotment. We have the high school allotment funds. I don't know how much really they use.
That would remain with the district, they can use from year to year.
Yeah, they change. Professors change. We do purchase the online piece for math, which is so it's about $100 for that. So we purchase that piece in addition to the $100. But when it comes to like speech or English or government, we don't purchase those.
We've toyed with that idea, Charles, of buying like a class set and just keeping them and letting the kids just use them each semester until they're out of
That's something we need to look at, because you can get that email account.
Yeah.
And you got, I assume, pretty good balance in the email account.
We did.
We have no balance now.
English enough.
We have $1,000 left in our debt.
But you have new funding September 1, right?
Yeah, well, we're supposed to have a funding. They were supposed to have our amounts into June, 1st of July. So you can go ahead and go through the pre-approval process right now, but they're still not available. So.
But you can just turn those in as a supplemental. You know, they're not state adopted, so, but you can still get the money back from the state, so it doesn't, it's just out of your email account.
Yeah. We've thought about that. It's just, they change. They can change.
I don't think the kids should have to buy their books. Where I'm coming from.
Shaggy's trying to get you to spend money.
Get me to spend money. I was trying not to ask for money.
Charles, that would be a nice.
You're resisting pretty heavily.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing to do for the families and the
Sure.
kids. Okay, we'll get
We'll
something
look at it.
together.
Okay. I mean, I'm all for the program, but I think the district needs to look at buying the kids' books, personally.
Since it's a dual credit?
Sure. And they become property of the school and same professor the next year when you already have the books in your inventory.
Yeah, just, they change quite often, I guess.
Yeah, and honestly too, we're, all CTC courses, we think will be taught by a high school teacher next year. Now, some of them will not be, will still be under supervision from a professor from CTC, but like speech is, our teacher teaches it. She has her requirements that she needs to be able to teach that. We're trying to get our English teacher to do it. We have one of our teachers does the government section. So really, I think the only ones that are being supervised by a CT instructor is still our dual credit math and our dual credit history. Dual credit U.S. history.
Government still this year.
What's that?
Government still this year.
Government still this year. He wasn't able to get off of it.
And are some of these courses still online? They're computer generated?
Just the math.
Math is and government's blended. Government's some online, some lecture based.
Any other questions? Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? Charles, second. Shane? Any other questions for Mr. Webb? He's just dying to have some more. No? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We'll look at
Thank
those
you.
books, Mr. Roberts.
Okay.
And you do the next, the order of general election.
So next up is just a little bit of housekeeping. So a trustee election order should be adopted calling for the election on November 5th for electing 2 trustees. The election would be held at various locations in Coryell County and Bell County between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I've actually reached out to Mr. Crothers to see if we could have some early voting at one of the schools. And there's been so much legislation that House Bill 1888 says that you have to, if you're going to do that, it's got to be available to the voters during the entire hours, 7 to 7. And so Justin recommended, you might not want to do that. And so we at least inquired about it, and they're gearing up for another election season. And so basically I'm recommending that the board adopt a trustee election order calling for an election to be conducted on November 5th for the purpose of electing 2 trustees for a 3-year term. And so even beginning today, candidates can start filing for a place on the ballot. And in fact, I believe a couple of people have already filled out an application. Really? And so if they want to announce anything tonight, they can do that as well.
I did one.
I did as well.
So both of our incumbents will be running again. And, but again, it's the window is open starting today and going forward. But again, the recommendation stands for you guys.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? David, second. Linda, any other questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now you're going to appoint the election administrators?
Yes, it's a joint effort between Coryell County and Gatesville, and the county will appoint the election judge and necessary clerks for making sure the election runs smoothly, and that's a big job. And Justin Crothers does an excellent job, and so does Melinda out of Bell County. So my recommendation would be that the board appoint Justin Crothers, our Coryell County tax assessor collector, and Melinda Ludicky from Bell County elections as our 2 election administrators.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? Cheyenne, second. Linda, any questions? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed. Thank you. Motion carries. Now we have policy updates.
These policy updates are very tedious, and so they give us a humongous packet of papers of revised board policy, and TASB does a good job of going through there and making recommendations, and so they're a trustworthy source, and oftentimes these are minor changes in wording and different things that they recommend, but I gave you 2 layers of summaries. The one in the little agenda action sheet is probably the one that cuts to the chase the quickest. And then if you wanted more detail, I typed up another summary sheet that went behind that. But again, a lot of these were already policies that were here, but they changed a little bit, so they're revising it. They did add a couple of them in there though, but did you guys, in looking at those, have any real questions? And if not, I would recommend that the board replace, add, and delete the local policies as listed in the agenda. And again, all of that is recommended by TASB. So they have a team of lawyers that scour those papers and keep us out of trouble, and so we trust them.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Charles is going to make a motion for this recommendation. Is there a second? John, any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Okay, now, student code of conduct.
Last one.
Mr. Harper.
We also use TASB for our student code of conduct. They sent out a model student code of conduct and a handbook to the districts with the changes from the legislature. And so went in and took the new language that was not in our code of conduct and put it in our this coming school year's code of conduct. And those are highlighted for you. They should have been uploaded so that you could have looked through. The yellow is coming from TASB using their language, but then we also added some things that we wanted to put in there, and that was in green. Just kind of highlighting some of the areas that we needed to include as security personnel. A lot of school districts have SROs or police departments or security companies. We have to address that in our code of conduct, which we're using the SROs. A threat assessment team was in last year's code of conduct, but now we expanded it ourselves to have a district team. We have a campus that gets together whenever there's a threat. We come in, we assess the threat, ask a lot of questions, try to get a best picture of what's going on, and follow some protocols. And now we're adding the district so that we can have the campus be able to support them and also have things filter up to us and have the SROs involved in all the support on the threat assessments. The prohibited aversive techniques, they've listed things in the code of conduct for us not to do to students. We're going to keep them out of lunch. We're going to keep them and inflict physical or emotional discomfort or pain, but call it something else. And so they want to make sure that we're paying attention to what our consequences are and not saying, yeah, it's called timeout, but we're actually keeping them from eating or having their exercise at recess and things of that nature. The coursework during suspension, they require us to provide work while they're suspended, and it has to be in another form than technology or in addition to technology. It can't all be just digital, where some students don't have access to it, so we have to provide digital if we want to, but we have to make sure that they are able to get coursework in a different format. They put in their transition services, and this is what we have for our exit conferences from DAP. When a student is coming off of DAP, going back to their home campus, there needs to be a transition conference so that the supports that they were working on in DAP carry forth onto the home campus. They're not just say, okay, you're released, they show up the next day and they're back on main campus. That's one of the things that we included as an intake conference. You don't just show up at the door of DAP without having a conference, and you don't show back up at your home campus without having a conference with key people involved in it. We also have the homeless and foster care indicators. Whenever you're considering discipline, you always have to look at self-defense, the intent of the person, the discipline history. You have to look at a disability, and now they want you to take into account if they're homeless or if they're under the foster care program before you administer with some sort of discipline. And then under the age of 10 cannot be expelled. They can be assigned to DAP, but they cannot be expelled, so that language has been included as well. The code of conduct is the only thing that you approve. The handbooks are being revised at the campuses, and they'll be put up on your webpage for you to review once they're ready. And so I recommend you approve the student code of conduct as presented with the highlighted information included.
Any questions for him? Is there a motion for that recommendation? Linda, a second? Shane? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Harper.
Thank you.
Now we're ready to go into executive session at 8:45. We'll have a 10-minute break, is that good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you guys. I need to